Hello, welcome back to my haunted library and welcome to another slow burn Sunday. The weather has been so cold that, I can't think of anything but spring. We had a little bit of a tease last week where it got up to 60 degrees and now it's like 30 degrees, but I refuse to wear nothing but like a short sleeve dress because I'm just ready for spring, if that makes sense. And then I'll be complaining about the heat. But anyway, it's a good day to watch a movie. And today's film is relatively new for me because I usually look at older films. And that is The Invitation, which came out in 2015. I saw this movie when it first came out on streaming and I absolutely fell in love with it. I rewatched it and it didn't quite have the punch as the first time around, but I did notice other things. I think the best way to watch this movie is to really go in cold. I don't want to give out any spoilers, but I can't discuss it without doing that. So if you haven't seen it, I really do suggest that you watch it first before you watch this video because I will have spoilers. If you've seen the movie and you just want to get into a discussion of it, please stick around. And if you watch it, come back and, for the discussion because it's such a good film. One of my favorite things about filmmaking is when you have a really talented director and a really talented cast, which we have here, and a low budget film can be very successful. You have one central location and an ensemble cast and a great story, and you can do a lot if you are clever and know what you're doing. And this director certainly does. And I love it when there is a female director to celebrate. And her name is Karyn Kusama, and she's done other films. This one was written by Phil Hay and Matt Manfredi and stars Logan Marshall-Green, who I believe was in the Alien, not Covenant, but the other one, Prometheus. I believe he was in that. He's really good in this. He has a beard and just it works. He looks good with a beard and long hair. He looks good all the way around. I have to say, he was a good choice for this leading man. It also has my friend Toby Huss in it. Toby and I were in a production of The Monk back in 1990. I did a video about that. I'll try to put it here. I did that video a couple years ago. We were in a production of The Monk in this very low budget theater production in the Lower East Side of New York. And we kind of knew even at that time that Toby was destined to be a star. He was the lead in the play. He played the monk. I played a couple different roles, but he and I had some scenes together. So moving forward, there will be spoilers, so I don't want anyone to get mad. But the movie starts out in, it's in California, Southern California. So I feel like we're in Hollywood Hills, beautiful area that I've spent some time in. But this is not beautiful, sunny California. So it starts off with a man with a beard named Will and his girlfriend, Kira. So Kira has the invitation. It's this beautiful printed invitation from Eden, Will's ex-wife, and her new husband, David, and they're hosting a party for all their old friends. And just in Will's affect, he seems very disturbed by this. So he's, going back into seeing his ex-wife for the first time in a couple of years, back into his old house in the Hollywood Hills. And Kara seems like a very nice person. I kind of get the sense that this is a new relationship, but Will is very stoic. Something's bothering him. Later we find out what it is. But on the way to the party, they hit a coyote and in a real jump scare. So you kind of know you're in that territory. And the coyote is dying and Will takes it out of its misery by hitting it with a tire iron. So there is a heavy dose of symbolism right there and foreshadowing right in your face. He goes to the party, and Eden, his wife and ex-wife rather, is she's really good. I like the actress. I like this. She's wearing this long white gown. Tammy Blanchard. That she seems very. It seems very symbolic. She's almost like angelic in her appearance, and there are a whole bunch of other friends. There's There's the cute gay couple. There's the kind of the heavyset guy who's kind of the goofball. There's this girl named Gina who's like cute, and she's waiting for her boyfriend to show up. And then there's this wacky girl, this kind of creepy girl. And this actress I've seen in other like low budget films, and she's very good. Her name's Lindsay Burge, and she plays Sadie. Now, that's like the first Manson clue is the name Sadie, because you may recall that Susan Atkins' nickname was Sadie, or Sexy Sadie, which they took from, I think it was the White Album by the Beatles. And she first appears kind of just off, it's this beautiful house, very California. And she kind of appears like down a dim hallway, and you notice that she's not wearing any pants, but no underwear. She's like naked from the waist down, but it's kind of blurry, and it's all from Will's point of view. This film does a really good job of kind of getting into Will's head of what he sees, which is a contrast to how other people are acting at the party. Most people are just, drinking wine, very expensive wine, having a great time. Will is very reluctant. He's holding back. He's not drinking at first. He's cautious and a bit paranoid. And it kind of plays on that idea of like, is this all in his head? Is he just paranoid? Is he having a mental breakdown or something else? So this couple, David and Eden, they're like very new age, and they've just been to Mexico. They spent time in Mexico where they joined this cult. So it's kind of out there that, what, were you guys part of a cult? And it's like, no, it's this wonderful new experience where I'm able to let go of my grief and all the pain in my life and have this wonderful life. And then we learn in sort of bits and pieces what the grief is that Eden and Will both have, is that their son was killed in a freak accident. Another kid hit him with a baseball bat by mistake. This is all done in flashbacks. We see some flashbacks of their son. This was a tragic event that broke up their marriage, drove them both to the brink of insanity, and Eden ends up going to Mexico and getting healed by this cult called The Invitation. And Toby Huss plays the cult leader, who only appears in video. So they show a video of him helping, again in quotes, helping a young woman pass over from life to death. So we see in this video, which they show to the party, it's almost like an Amway party. Like, now we're going to show you something. Like, when you get invited to one of those parties where they're selling candles or something, and you're like, why did I come here? Now I've got to buy this overpriced candle for like $35 so my friend won't be mad at me. So just beware of those parties. So Dr. Joseph is the cult leader, played by Toby Huss. And this other character shows up named Pruitt, John Carroll Lynch. I've seen him in other movies. He's really scary. In fact, in this time I watched it, I really focused my attention on him, because this is an ensemble. There's a lot of conversation going on, and it's beautifully directed. So he shows up and tells his story about how he's part of the Invitation, part of this cult from Mexico, and how it helped him. And his pain was that in a fit of rage, he murdered his wife, went to prison for it. He's an older guy, and now he kind of came out, but this living with the guilt was too much until he found this cure in Mexico of this cult. And so one of the guests gets freaked out by this, and I don't blame her, and she's like, oh, I just want to leave. Now, you notice also that the house is there's some strange things about the house. Will remarks that, hey, why are there bars on the windows? There's like these crisscross patterns on the window. And Eden's like, well, there have been some break-ins in our neighborhood. But it's a little hard to buy. The phone doesn't work up here anymore. I mean, I think even in 2015 when this came out, that was a bit of a stretch. Like in the Hollywood Hills, like we just don't have any phone reception this far into the valley. But, that has become the thing with Horror fiction, I've dealt with that problem myself in my own writing and in films. It's like, what do you do with the damn cell phone? Have someone drop it in the toilet or something. You have to get rid of that cell phone, because back in the day, you would see like a gloved hand come up and like cut the phone wires. You don't see that anymore. You can't get around it. So anyway, that was a little bit hard to believe, but overall, it's a very tight story. So another thing happens in the story is that David, the husband, and he reminds me of like every California man I've ever met who's like into that new age stuff. It just gets to be a little bit, you recognize that kind of like, yeah, like, let me have it, brother. I can take anything you have to say to me, and everything's cool. He's good. He kind of looks like a Bradley Cooper, this actor, but he keeps locking the door, and he takes the key, and Will's like, hey, what if there was a fire? And then you see him reluctantly put the key back in. But one of the scenes that I found was so well done, and again, this is excellent direction and kind of shows you what, if you're creative in just one setting, how you can play out a scene where you don't have to take the camera outside. You can shoot things through a window or use reflections to show things. But when the blonde girl decides to leave, first they try to keep her there, the hosts. And she's like, no, I really want to go. And you see Pruitt, again, a very scary character, like, oh, well, I'm parked behind you. Let me just move my car. And you see Will watch this scene unfold through the window where Pruitt lets her go, but then he calls her back at the last minute and says, hey, let me talk to you. And this is all done through the window, and then the light change and there's like a reflection, and now he can't see what's going on because he gets interrupted by David, and we don't really see what happens to her, but later we kind of assume that Pruitt does something to her to keep her from not leaving. We can just assume what that is, although it's never really followed up. I just thought that was a great scene with a lot of mystery in it. Other things happen. Will discovers these drugs in Eden's dresser drawer. What is she doing with all these barbiturates? What's going on? Is he being paranoid? You see a crazy Sadie, who's definitely one of these like cult chicks. Like she's all in. She's a true believer, but she's definitely unhinged. She comes on to him sexually, makes some very creepy proposition about things that he can do to her. And he's like a noble guy. Like, I have to say, his character is strong and noble. And there's all kinds of other little plot twists. But at the dinner party, after they serve a cake, and there's just great where you see this red velvet cake with a big knife stuck through it. Another, a little heavy-handed maybe, but another foreshadowing or symbolism. And he says to everyone, don't drink the wine. It's poisoned. It's drugged, and smashes all the glasses. And then the guy he got a message from this guy who had shown up earlier, the girl Gina's boyfriend. And he's like, they did something to this guy. He was here. He was the first one to arrive. He never came to the party. But then he shows up. So now it's like, oh, he's just paranoid. It's one of those little false flags that horror movies love to do, like the fake out. All of a sudden, one of the girls who did drink the wine, goes into convulsions, and a murder spree begins. And now the guests are being killed because this is a death cult. So what they were preparing for is this sort of Jim Jones massacre, or what was the other one? Heaven's Gate. The suicide pact cult. Only these people don't want to commit suicide. Well, Eden and David have, and the other cult members like Pruitt and Sadie have all resigned themselves to do this, but they want to take other people with them. And that's the thing about these cults, why do you always have to take everybody with you? These cult leaders who, like a Jim Jones or the crazy Heaven's Gate people. I watched that Heaven's Gate documentary with, what were they, the Bo and Peep. I felt so bad for these people who got roped into this thing, because cults are interesting. And I think with, just to interject some thoughts about this, people still participate in major religions, but it's not as intertwined with the society as it used to be. It created a vacuum for these cults to appear because people want answers. And when someone shows up, like a cult leader who's like, well, I have all the answers, vulnerable people will fall for it. It's like that Nexium cult, that crazy guy, I forget his name, but I was glued to that story for a while. Oh, Keith Raniere or whatever. This was all about him and his ego and his Johnson. If you look at that, it was all about him and just getting women to serve him by mind games of the worst kind. It's just like pathetic. A lot of these cult leaders, that's really all they're after, is just personal power. And when they find themselves losing it, their egos are such that they can't just die themselves, like kill themselves or just go away or just quietly admit that they're a fraud, is they have to take everybody with them, because that's how just warped their egos are. They're just warped people. And I've always been fascinated by cult stories. I really have. So this movie was really right up my alley. Yeah, I really loved it, and it was great to see it again. And I hope that more people see this movie. I watched it on Shudder, on streaming service, and it's definitely worth paying for just, a couple bucks to rent it. It's really excellent. So I really loved this movie. I thought it was great. I give it 5 stars because it's excellent, and I'd love to see a female director hit it out of the park like that. So Matilda, what did you think of The Invitation? Well, what a coincidence. I just happened to receive an invitation to a party from an old beau of mine. I can't make it, Regina, but maybe you would like to go in my place. I think I'll pass. Anyway, that's all we have for today. Thanks so much for checking out this week's Slow Burn Sunday, and we'll see you next time in the Haunted Library. Bye!